Saint Teresa of Calcutta, born Agnes Gonxha Bojaxhiu, came into the world on August 26, 1910, in the city of Skopje, now part of North Macedonia. The very next day, on August 27th, she received the sacrament of baptism at the Church of the Sacred Heart, Baptismal Register of Sacred Heart Parish, Skopje. She was born into an Albanian family, remarkable in its context. While the majority of Albanians at that time were Muslim or Orthodox, her family stood out as devout Roman Catholics, fervent in their faith and faithful in religious practice. At that period, Skopje was still under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. It was only in 1912, after the Balkan Wars, that the region was freed from the empire's control. Her father, Nobel Bojaxhiu, was a successful merchant, managing a construction company and a food shop. He traveled frequently, spoke several languages, understood the currents of his time, and was active in both social and political life. He served on the council of the Albanian community, leaving his mark as a man deeply devoted to his people. At his side was his wife, Drina, who instilled in their children the very first lessons of faith and charity. In 1919, when Agnes had just turned 9, tragedy struck. Her father died suddenly. From that moment, the weight of the family rested entirely on Drina's shoulders. Alone, she labored tirelessly as a seamstress to provide for her 3 children: Aga, born 1904, Lazar, born 1907, and Agnes, born 1910, while at the same time steadfastly raising them in the spirit of the Christian faith. The family atmosphere was deeply imbued with faith. Each evening they gathered in prayer. They attended daily Mass, prayed the Rosary throughout the month of May, and devoutly took part in the feasts of the Blessed Virgin. Their home was always open to the poor who knocked at their door, and no one ever left without receiving some form of help. During holidays, the family made pilgrimages to the shrine of Our Lady of Letnis, now in Kosovo, a sacred place that left a lasting impression on Agnes and nourished her devotion to the Virgin Mary. From her earliest years, Agnes loved the Church, delighted in reading spiritual books, and found joy in prayer and song. The example of her mother, Drina, was a shining light for her children. Drina did not hesitate to sacrifice her time to care for a woman nearby who struggled with alcoholism, or to tend to a widow with 6 children. When she was occupied, Agnes would take her place, washing, feeding, and performing those works of charity herself. After the widow passed away, Drina welcomed all 6 orphaned children into her own home and raised them as if they were her own. It was within this atmosphere that Agnes, from her earliest years, learned a profound lesson. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And she would often repeat another truth that flowed from this same spirit. Even if what we do is just a drop in the ocean, if it is missing, the ocean would lack something. In her teenage years, Agnes was deeply involved in her parish. She sang in the choir, joined prayer gatherings, and took part in small apostolic works for the youth. According to historical sources, there is no evidence that she participated in the Legion of Mary, Legio Mariae, while in Skopje, since the movement was only founded in Ireland in 1921 and spread gradually later on. She had a gift for languages, often assisting a priest who struggled with them, teaching catechism to children, and eagerly reading books about the lives of Slovenian and Croatian missionaries serving in Bengal, India. By the age of 12, the desire to consecrate her life had already taken root, to belong wholly to God, and to work for Him. Yet the question remained, how could she be sure that it was truly His call? Agnes prayed fervently, confided in her mother and sister, and then brought the matter to her confessor. Her spiritual guide offered a simple yet profound sign: rely on joy. If the thought of being called by God to serve Him and others stirred a deep, lasting joy, then that joy itself was the compass pointing out the direction of her life. That counsel became the quiet, guiding star during her years of discernment. The year 1928 marked a turning point. Before leaving home, on the Feast of the Assumption, Agnes went on pilgrimage to the shrine of Our Lady in Letnice, entrusting her decision to Our Lady's blessing. On September 25, 1928, she left Skopje for Ireland to join the Sisters of Loreto, a congregation actively serving in India. Her journey took her through Zagreb, Austria, Switzerland, France, and England. From London she travelled to Rathfarnham, Dublin, where she entered Loreto Abbey to study English and begin religious formation. When she received the habit, Agnes chose the name Teresa, in honor of Saint Therese of the Child Jesus of Lisieux. Historical records note that she did not stop in Lisieux on her way, but chose the saint as her patron out of personal devotion. By the end of 1928, she boarded a ship bound for India, the land of her dreams. According to the recollections of Loreto sisters who traveled with her, preserved in the archives of the Loreto congregation, the voyage lasted many weeks without a priest on board, which meant no Mass could be celebrated, not even on Christmas Day. Yet the sisters made a small crib, prayed the Rosary, and sang Christmas hymns. In early 1929, the ship docked at Colombo, Sri Lanka, then Madras, now Chennai, and finally Calcutta. From there, they continued to Darjeeling, at the foothills of the Himalayas, where the young novice would complete her formation. On May 23, 1929, Teresa officially entered the novitiate, and 2 years later, on May 25, 1931, she made her first vows. Immediately afterward, she was sent to Bengal to serve in a small hospital caring for mothers who were sick, hungry, and destitute. It was here, in the face of boundless poverty, that her young heart was profoundly moved. The call to serve the poorest of the poor began to take shape, quietly yet with a decisive force, preparing her for the call within the call that would burst forth some years later. From this experience, she drew a conviction she would often repeat: one of the greatest diseases is to be nobody to anybody. This truth became a driving force, urging her to give her life completely to God and to humanity. After her formation, Sister Teresa was sent to Calcutta to study pedagogy. Alongside her studies, she never missed the chance to spend time caring for the sick and poor. Upon graduation, she officially became a teacher at St. Mary's High School for Bengali girls. Her first tasks were simple: sweeping and scrubbing the classrooms. Yet, from those humble beginnings, she won the respect and love of her students through her dedication, humility, and kindness. The number of students steadily grew, and they affectionately called her Ma, the Bengali word for mother. On Sundays, she would visit the families of her students, especially those in poverty. On May 24, 1937, in Darjeeling, she professed her final vows, becoming, as she herself expressed, the spouse of Jesus for all eternity. After this solemn commitment, she was appointed headmistress of St. Mary's School, right in the heart of Calcutta, where she not only administered the school but also taught, sometimes even leading geography and history classes. Beside the school lay the Motijil slum, one of the poorest in the city. Each day, as she passed by on her way to class, Sister Teresa could not ignore the sight of people living destitute, sick, and abandoned. In her letters to her mother, one hears the echo of Drena's spirit of charity, continually reminding her daughter to care for the poor. Together with her students, Sister Teresa often went into hospitals, slums, and the homes of the needy. They did more than pray. They also engaged in serious discussions about what they witnessed and carried out concrete acts of service. She would remind them, "Work without love is slavery." During this period, she was guided by Father François-Henri, S.J., a Belgian Jesuit who became her spiritual director for many years, encouraging her to deepen her desire to serve the most destitute. Under his direction, Teresa's longing to give herself wholly to the poor grew ever stronger, though she still did not yet know how it would take form. It was here in Calcutta, in a small school beside a sprawling slum, under the influence of her spiritual guides, that the seed of a call within a call began to take root, preparing her for the decisive turning point of her life. In the midst of these years of inner restlessness, on September 10, 1946, while traveling by train to Darjeeling for retreat, Sister Teresa underwent a spiritual experience that she would later describe as the most important journey of my life. On that train, in silence and prayer, she felt a new, powerful, and unmistakable call to leave the security of Loreto and go to live among the poorest of the poor, to share their life and to serve them as she would serve Christ himself. She explained that this was not simply an idea or a passing inspiration, but a command, a duty, a certainty beyond doubt. I knew what I had to do, but I did not yet know how to do it. This experience would later be known, both to her and within the Loreto community, as the call within the call. For Sister Teresa, it was not a break from religious life, but its radical fulfillment, taking the form of a special mission, to respond to the words of Jesus on the cross, "I thirst." John 19:28. His thirst for love and for souls. From that time onward, September 10th would be remembered by the Missionaries of Charity as Inspiration Day. After much prayer, she shared her experience with a few sisters and with her superior, who then directed her to consult Archbishop Ferdinand Perrier, S.J., the Archbishop of Calcutta. When she presented her calling, the Archbishop did not immediately grant permission. He sought counsel from the Jesuit fathers, including Father François-Henri, S.J., and especially Father Celeste van Exem, S.J., who would remain her close spiritual guide for many years. They all recognized the sincerity of her desire, but also raised serious concerns. India was moving toward independence in 1947. The political and social situation was unstable, and a European woman living in the slums of Calcutta could be misunderstood, or even endangered. Archbishop Ferrier counseled her to pray and wait at least another year, and if the conviction persisted, to move forward. He also suggested she might consider joining the Sisters of St. Anne, an Indian congregation wearing blue saris, already engaged in serving the poor. Yet Sister Teresa felt deeply that this was not her path. She was not only called to serve the poor, but to live among them, as one of them. A year later, when she returned with the same unwavering conviction, Archbishop Perrier was ready to support her, but remained cautious. He required her to obtain permission from Rome, as well as from the Superior General of the Loreto Sisters in Dublin. The process would take quite some time. During those long months of prayer and waiting, she grew ever more immersed in the words of Christ on the cross. "I thirst." John 19:28. He did not thirst for water, but for love. And Mother Teresa would often remind her spiritual children, "What we must do is to quench his thirst." In August 1948, After a long period of waiting and discernment, Sister Teresa finally received permission to leave the Loreto community, though she continued to keep her 3 vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. At the age of 38, she laid aside the traditional habit of the Loreto sisters and clothed herself in a simple white sari with blue borders, the humble garment of India's poor, which from then on became the symbol of her new mission. Her first stop was Patna, where she trained with the medical mission sisters, taking a short course in basic nursing. She knew well that if she wanted to serve the poor in their filthy, disease-ridden huts, she needed some knowledge of medicine. How to prevent illness, how to clean wounds, how to care for the body. Without that preparation, she would not be able to live out the call she had received. There, a nun who was also a doctor offered her a piece of wise advice: not to imitate the poor by eating only rice and salt, as she had planned. If you collapse, you will be of no help to anyone, the superior warned. It was counsel that opened her eyes. To serve the poor faithfully, she would need to preserve her strength. Returning to Calcutta, she set foot for the first time into the slums and streets where the poorest of the poor struggled to survive. All that she carried with her amounted to a bar of soap and 5 rupees, a detail preserved in oral tradition as a symbol of her destitute beginning. Oral tradition. From that, almost nothing, she began teaching orphans and street children how to read, how to write, how to wash their hands, how to live with a little dignity. At first, the classroom was simply the open air. Later, she managed to rent a tiny room to serve as a modest school. Beyond teaching, she bathed the children, washed wounds, and tended to the sick. People were astonished. A European woman, dressed in a poor sari like theirs, speaking fluent Bengali, and bending down to wash and care for those whom society had abandoned. Many wondered who she was, but it was precisely in that silent, self-giving service that the face of Christ shone through her. During those first months, she lodged with the little sisters of the poor, who cared for the elderly destitute. It was in those days that she came to live more deeply what she had always believed. When we stop before a sick person or a poor one, we are touching the suffering body of Christ Himself. This was the core of her spirituality, transforming every act of charity into a direct encounter with the Lord. Her only support was divine providence. She trusted completely that wherever there was need, God would provide, whether medicine, food, clothing, or shelter for the abandoned poor. And indeed, at every step, God's hand opened doors, and what was needed arrived. Each midday, the children received not only a glass of milk and a piece of soap, but also heard her speak about God, the God of love who never abandoned them, even when their lives seemed covered in darkness. From this humble beginning, a new spiritual family slowly took shape, the first seed of what would become the Missionaries of Charity. In those quiet days of sowing the first seeds of a new community, an event occurred that left a deep mark on Mother Teresa's heart. One day, a young Bengali woman, from a well-off family and once her former student, knocked on the door and expressed her desire to remain with Mother and serve the poor. Mother listened attentively, but responded with realism. She did not accept her at once. She spoke frankly about the harsh poverty, the dirty and heavy work, and urged the young woman to pray and wait, to be certain of her decision. On March 19, 1949, the young woman returned. This time, she wore a plain, humble sari, and no longer carried any jewelry. She had made her decision. She became the very first to join Mother Teresa's small community, and took as her religious name Mother's own baptismal name, Agnes. Not long after, others followed. By May, there were 3 sisters. By November, 5. And only a year later, the number had grown to 7. Mother Teresa prayed unceasingly that Christ and Our Lady would send more vocations. The work was immense, and the laborers far too few. The sisters lived with strict discipline, rising at dawn, spending long hours in prayer, attending daily Mass, and drawing strength from the Eucharist before stepping into Calcutta's dark alleys. It was this rhythm of prayer and service that sustained them in their heavy labor. Mother often reminded them, "I only ask you one thing. Persevere in giving without tiring. But do not give from your surplus. Give until it hurts, until you are wounded." It was in such giving that love became real. Through the generosity of a benefactor, Mr. Michael Gomes, the sisters obtained a stable dwelling. The top floor of his house was offered to them. That same year, Mother Teresa officially became an Indian citizen, binding her life to the land and people she had chosen to love and serve until her last breath. As the community grew stronger, Mother Teresa recognized that the time had come to establish an official religious congregation. To draft the first constitution, she turned to trusted companions. Jesuit fathers Julian Henry and Celeste van Exem, with Father de Gelder giving the final review. The draft was presented to Archbishop Ferdinand Perrier, who then sent it to Rome for approval. By early autumn, the joyful news arrived. The decree of approval, signed by Pope Pius XII, was granted. On October 7, 1950, the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary, in the small chapel of the community, a solemn Mass of inauguration was celebrated. Archbishop Perrier presided, Father van Exem read the decree, and the Missionaries of Charity were officially born, with just 12 founding members. Less than 5 years later, the young congregation was raised to the status of a pontifical institute, directly under the authority of the Pope, becoming a vibrant branch within the heart of the Universal Church. As the Missionaries of Charity grew, Mother Teresa realized that the work of service could not remain limited to a community of women, religious. To respond more fully to both the material and spiritual needs of the poor, she gradually founded several new branches. In 1963, the first men's branch was born, the Missionary Brothers of Charity, initiated by Mother with the help of Father Joseph Langford. In 1976, she founded the Contemplative Branch for Women, to sustain the mission through prayer and a hidden life. 3 years later, in 1979, the Contemplative Branch for Men was also established. By 1984, Mother officially founded the Missionary Fathers of Charity, gathering priests who wished to live the same charism and spirituality. Yet Mother's vision was not confined to those in consecrated life. She also inspired service among lay people and even the sick. Thus, the groups of co-workers of Mother Teresa and the sick and suffering co-workers were formed, bringing together people of many nations who shared in her spirit of prayer, simplicity, sacrifice, and hidden service. Later, she established the Lay Missionaries of Charity, enabling men and women living family life to participate in the spirituality of the congregation. And to respond to the requests of many priests, in 1981 Mother, together with Father Joseph Langford, founded the Corpus Christi movement for priests, helping them to live the spirit of the Missionaries of Charity within their priestly vocation. As the congregation expanded, the world began to take greater notice of Mother and her works of charity. Many national and international honors were awarded to her. The Padma Shri Award of India, 1962, the Peace Prize of Pope John XXIII, 1971, the Nehru Prize for the Promotion of Peace and International Understanding, 1972, and the highest of all, the Nobel Peace Prize, 1979. Yet, as Mother herself often said, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Before every accolade the world bestowed upon her, she responded simply, "All for the glory of God, and in the name of the poor." The entire life and work of Saint Teresa of Calcutta stand as a living testimony to the joy of loving, to the greatness and dignity within every human being, to the value of even the smallest act when done with faith and love, and above all, to the profound union with God. Yet, there was a hidden dimension of this saint, revealed only after her passing. Deep within, she endured a painful and prolonged experience, feeling distant from God, even as though abandoned by Him. She herself called it the darkness, a dark night of the soul. According to her private letters, published in Skopje, My Light, 2007, this experience began when she first started her mission among the poor and lasted until the end of her life. It did not destroy her faith. Rather, it became a mysterious way of sharing in the burning thirst and the loneliness of Christ on the cross, while at the same time entering into the profound destitution of the poor she served. In the final years of her life, despite her weakening health, she continued to lead the congregation and respond to the needs of the poor and the Church. By 1997, the Missionaries of Charity counted about 4,000 sisters in 610 houses across 123 countries. That March, she entrusted leadership to her successor, Sister Nirmala Joshi, but she herself continued to travel and meet people until her strength no longer allowed. After her last visit with Pope John Paul II, she returned to Calcutta, spending her remaining days receiving visitors and guiding her sisters. On September 5, 1997, she was called home to God. The government of India honored her with a state funeral, and she was laid to rest at the mother house of the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta. Her tomb quickly became a pilgrimage site for multitudes, from the poorest of the poor to heads of state. Less than 2 years later, due to her reputation for holiness and reports of favors through her intercession, Pope John Paul II permitted the opening of her cause for canonization in 1999. On December 20, 2002, he approved the decree recognizing her heroic virtues and a miracle attributed to her intercession. On October 19, 2003, she was beatified in St. Peter's Square, with her liturgical memorial set for September 5th. This was an exceptionally swift process. Only 6 years after her death, she was raised to the honors of the altar, one of the fastest causes in modern times. For comparison, St. John Bosco and St. Maximilian Kolbe were beatified around 30 years after their passing. Blessed Teresa of Calcutta became a symbol for all humanity. Of Albanian blood, an Indian citizen, an honorary citizen of the United States, yet so self-forgetful that her birth name, Agnes Gonxha Bojaxhiu, was nearly forgotten. Her image endures as that of a Christian, with unshakable faith, steadfast hope, and charity without borders. The call Christ gave her, "Come, be my light," made her a true missionary of charity, a mother of the poor, and a visible sign of God's mercy in the world. After her beatification in 2003, the canonization process of Mother Teresa of Calcutta continued with the investigation and recognition of an additional miracle attributed to her intercession. This miracle concerned the extraordinary healing of a man in Brazil who suffered from a severe brain illness. After doctors had declared his condition untreatable, he recovered in a way that could not be explained by science, following prayers through the intercession of Mother Teresa. The medical and theological commissions of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints examined the case thoroughly and confirmed that it was indeed a miracle beyond natural explanation. With this confirmation, Pope Francis officially signed the decree of canonization. On Sunday, September 4th, 2016, in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican, he presided over the solemn Mass of canonization in the presence of around 120,000 faithful from all over the world. From that day forward, Mother Teresa has been venerated throughout the Church under the title of Saint Teresa of Calcutta. Her liturgical memorial is celebrated on September 5th, the anniversary of her death in 1997, according to the Roman liturgical calendar. This day is not only a commemoration of a saint of the 20th century, but also an invitation to the whole world to contemplate a living witness of God's merciful love. The meaning of the Church's act of canonizing her is profound. Saint Teresa of Calcutta stands as a universal model of dedication to the poorest of the poor, and as a sign that the gospel of Christ continues to be lived out in the smallest acts, when they are imbued with love. As Pope Francis said in his homily at the Canonization Mass, Mother Teresa was a missionary of charity, a missionary of mercy, near to everyone by defending life, by welcoming those abandoned and discarded. From that moment, Saint Teresa of Calcutta has been recognized worldwide not only as the mother of the poor, but also as a radiant witness of mercy, leaving the Church and humanity with a spiritual legacy that will never fade. If this story of Saint Teresa of Calcutta has touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you will continue to walk with us through the lives of the saints and their timeless witness of faith, hope, and love. Subscribe today so you won't miss the next inspiring journey of holiness